Hello, hello. Thanks for spending some time with me again today. Alrighty, we're going to read another 2 chapters out of the book, The Chocolate Touch. But right now, our friend John has such a terrible problem. He thinks the magic that it's making, all of the things he puts in his mouth turned to chocolate, is getting stronger. And he thinks this because all he did was touch his pencil inside his mouth. And then not just the tip of the pencil turned chocolate, the whole thing slowly turned to chocolate. So John has a serious issue here. Let's find out what's going to happen next. Here we go. Chapter 7. All right, boys and girls, Miss Plimsoll said. It's almost time for lunch. Clear up your things. Paint pots securely closed, brushes washed, paintings unpinned and laid out to dry, drawing boards stacked against the wall. Okay, here's the bell. First the front row, you are leaving. Timothy was leading, and then went Robin in a single file line. John alone walked slowly into the crowd, hurrying along the hallways to the school cafeteria. The school was proud of the cafeteria and the good food it served. The room was huge and bright, with windows all the way along one side overlooking the playground and the playing fields beyond those. The opposite side was taken up by a shiny silver service counter. Several boys and girls were already settled in at tables by the time John took his place in the food line. Envious, John noticed that a boy near him was sucking a straw dipped in milk. Oh! John could imagine the refreshing taste of cold, creamy milk. At another table, a group of girls were eating fat red cherries. John could almost feel the firm fruit on his tongue and the pleasure of biting through that tart, juicy pulp. The cherries must taste so good. They must be thirst-quenching. John unhappily took a tray from the pile and slid it along the rails in front of the top counter. He put a paper napkin on it, a glass, and a gleaming spoon. Then he added a knife and a fork on the tray. It seemed hardly worthwhile, but he felt that maybe he could try the food and drink. Perhaps if I eat in a different way without letting anything touch my lips, he muttered to himself. Maybe then my lunch won't all change to chocolate. He was not very hopeful. What? Asked the boy standing next to him. Nothing, John said. Thought I heard you say something about chocolate, the boy said. I hope today's chocolate cream pie, he said. That'd be super. On chocolate cream pie day in the past, John would just skip paying for the regular food, and he spent all his lunch money on dessert. The thought of 4 pieces of chocolate cream pie right now suddenly made his stomach feel as though he was on a roller coaster. Uneasy, flibberty-gibberty. John shuddered. Okay, he commented, wrinkling up his nose. The other boy shrugged his shoulders and started to choose his meal. John took a plate of cold chicken and some ham and some potato chips. He also took lettuce and a tomato salad. The white of the chicken, the pink of the ham, the gold of the potatoes, the pale green of the lettuce, and the red of the tomatoes all looked delicious. He also took a half a pint of milk, some whole wheat rolls, and a cool pat of butter, a little bit of water with ice cubes clanking around in the glass, and a dish of fresh fruit that had slices of orange and grapefruit and bananas and grapes in it. John's tray was loaded with just the sort of meal his mother was always trying to get him to eat. Until today, John had always thought it was pretty dull to eat sensible things when there were sweeter foods and drink to be had. Today, however, the sensible things looked the best to him, and his mouth began to water in its new sticky way. John paid for the lunch with the money his mother had given him and then went to an empty table and he sat down. His fingers were shaking slightly as he cut a slice of lettuce. His fork went through the leaves with a promising crunch. He stuffed the prongs of the fork into a mouth-sized piece of lettuce and carefully inserted it into his mouth. The lettuce did not touch his lips. John's teeth came together in crisp layers of sweet chocolate. He took a small piece of a potato chip. He tilted his head back until he was looking straight up at the ceiling and he dropped it straight down his throat. He felt it go down. A sharp fragment of sweet chocolate. He tried the milk, the water, the fruit. Every solid and every liquid that he sampled was turned into chocolate as soon as it entered into his mouth. Then he became aware of a shocking thing that he had not noticed at breakfast. The rim of each glass he drank out of had turned into a little bit of brown. The bowl of his spoon, the prongs of his fork, they'd all turned brown. And as John watched, horrified, the areas of magic chocolate slowly spread until at last the glasses and the knives and forks were all solid chocolate. The trouble was definitely getting worse. John's scalp tightened in fear. "What am I going to do?" he asked himself miserably. Oh dear, what's going to happen to me?" Leaving his tray of chocolate food and drink and utensils, John stumbled away from the cafeteria and out onto the playground. Chapter 8. English class passed without anything new happening. Mrs. Plimsoll gave out a word list to her students to take home. "The more words you know," she explained, as always, "the more exactly you can think." There were some difficult new words, John noticed. Indigestion, acidity, unhealthiness, moderation, digestibility. As Miss Plimsoll explained the meaning of each one, it seemed to John like they all had something to do with his situation. At last the bell rang. "Very well, class," Miss Plimsoll said. "Time for your other activities. Have a good afternoon." "Good afternoon, Miss Plimsoll." Miss Plimsoll gave the signal for them to leave, and the students in the front row filed out, followed by those in the second row, including John and Susan. Susan played a violin in the school orchestra, and usually she and John went to the rehearsals in the auditorium together. This time Susan hurried on ahead of him. John followed behind her very slowly. The members of the orchestra were sitting at their music stands in the auditorium when John, carrying his dark blue trumpet case, got to his chair in the brass section. Miss Quaver had already begun to explain a very hard passage to the girl who played the flute. "Okay, just after Jay sings, 'Nestles chirp and flee,'" she said, "you come in with your little trill, doodly 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 doo. Do you see the place right here on your music? Okay, good." "Oh, John," Miss Quaver exclaimed, seeing him sitting in his place, "I'm glad you're not absent. As I've told the others, this afternoon we are having our first joint rehearsal of my arrangement of A Boy's Song by James Hogg. We've all been over our individual parts and all the sections, as you will recall. Now it's time to put everything together." John nervously opened his trumpet case and took a shining golden trumpet from the bed of the red velvet. The beautiful new instrument gave him confidence. He worked the vowels nimbly with his fingers and looked up at Miss Quaver again. "Now, John," she said, "tell me when your little solo begins." Yeah, right after the end of the second verse," John said. He had practiced his part every night in the basement at home for the last 2 weeks. He knew every note perfectly. After that line, "That's the way for Belly and me." "Very good," Miss Quaver said. "And don't forget what I told you, John. This is a happy song. I want you to play ta-ta, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, simply repeating the rhythm of the voice. And I want you to be light and lively. This is supposed to be the song of a boy who loves to romp around in the country." "Ta-ta, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta," John thought. That shouldn't be too difficult, even with the whole orchestra listening to him. He had played it over and over and over again at home. But he would have to try extra hard here. This was his first solo. Everyone else was depending on him to play it correctly. "Right," said Miss Quaverly brightly. With her baton, she rapped 3 sharp times on the music stand before her. All the musicians brought their instruments into playing position. Susan poised her bow over the strings of her violin. John held the trumpet close to his mouth and wiggled his fingers on the valves. Mrs. Quaver's baton moved from side to side and up and then down. The pianist brought his fingers down on the ivory keys of the piano. The violinist and cellists made their wheeling and whumping sounds. All were in perfect unison. The rehearsal had begun. After the introduction, one of the older boys started to sing. Where the pools are bright and deep, where the gray trout lies asleep, up the river and over the lea, that's the way for Billy and me. After the last line of the first verse, John's fellow trumpeter echoed the rhythm of the singer's voice. Ta-ta, 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 ta-ta. Miss Quaver smiled at the successful performance, and with her baton gave the singer a signal to begin the second verse. Where the blackbird sings the latest, a little oboe went peep. Where the hawthorn blooms the sweetest, where the nestlings chirp and flee, the flute warbled just like it had been told to do. That's the way for Billy and me. John swallowed with effort and put the mouthpiece of his trumpet to his lips for his solo. The mouthpiece instantly changed to chocolate. Then, almost as fast, the chocolate spread along the instrument, changing all of that flashing gold into dull brown. The first note came out true, ta, but chocolate trumpets cannot withstand much pressure. The hole in the mouthpiece softened and clogged up, and the valve stuck as John desperately tried to finish his part. Miss Quaver's eyes almost popped out of her head as she listened to him play ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. It sounded as though John was trying to play a soap-filled bubble pipe. Terribly frustrated, he put down his trumpet. Miss Quaver was speechless. The orchestra all stopped playing and then started laughing. The other trumpeter leaned over toward John's chair and picked up his trumpet. It's a chocolate trumpet, he said. No wonder it sounds like that. John Midas was trying to play a chocolate. John did not wait around to hear any more. He ran from the stage and ran out to the playground and didn't even stop to look around. He just kept running through the stone gateway and on his way home. Oh, how terrible! Can you imagine how frustrated he must be and how scared he must be? Do you think anyone will believe him when if he goes home and tells his parents what's happening? Or if he tells the doctor what's going on? Would anybody believe him? Yikes. What would you do if you were John and you had this problem where everything that you touched with your mouth turned into your favorite food? Some of you liked pizza the most. Some liked sushi the most. I think that was Jace. Some of you liked ice cream, cookies and cream ice cream the most. So imagine that. If your most favorite food was all you ever tasted and everything that touched your mouth turned into that, what would you do? It's hard to imagine, isn't it? It would be such a crazy thing. Well, I can't wait to hear your creative responses. I'm so glad you joined me again today. We'll read more tomorrow and find out about poor John and what he does next. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.